Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're discussing how it's much more important for the VR industry to start delivering better software rather than additional hardware. I know there's an array of truly impressive headsets coming, including the PlayStation VR 2, the Pimax 12K, and the newly announced BigScreen Beyond, but as great as they all look, it's just not what we need right now. Now I will be going over the specs on the majority of this hardware, but I prefer to spend more time focusing on why this hardware is not what we need for both enthusiasts and newcomers alike. Now I am of course Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Like normal, I've included links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead to a specific topic. But before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor, Kiwi Design. They currently make my favorite Quest 2 Elite strap, which comes in multiple different versions. You can add an extra battery pack, high quality headphones, or even both. They also have other products like Valve Index style hand straps, and they just introduced a brand new RGB stand. Your controllers and headset magnetically connect. There's a charging indicator so you'll know when your headset's ready to go, and there's plenty of different RGB color options available. There's a link to Kiwi Design down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support this channel. Okay, so before we start off with the main topic, I would love to hear your feedback along the way. People have strong opinions on each VR platform, so let me know when you agree or disagree down in the comments. And now let's get into why we need better software rather than new hardware. Now to help explain this, I'll use a little bit of a console analogy. Imagine Sony and Microsoft just dropped new consoles right now, and they were significantly better than the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Now this new hardware is coming in at a premium, significantly more expensive than the current generation, and these consoles have no exclusive games, nor has anyone put out any major titles for the current generation in the last few years. Tell me, would anyone buy this hardware? You either most likely bought a console recently, and it's hard to justify the update, or you're a newcomer who wants to get into gaming, and the previous generation of hardware is just much cheaper. So that's where the PC VR industry is right now. The average person either just recently bought hardware, or just wants to find the lowest cost of entry. Combine that with the fact that no one is developing high-end exclusive PC VR titles, and the last major one was Half-Life Alyx back in 2019, it just makes all of this hardware seem pointless. And even if you are an extreme enthusiast, it seems like you're always making some sort of concession. Nothing is truly ever a straight upgrade. You might get increased clarity or a larger FOV, but it comes with some other issue or an insane price tag. Now when it comes to the PlayStation VR 2, the Pimax 12KX, and even the upcoming Quest 3, they're not exactly in this same category. But before we break into those headsets, let's start with the newly announced BigScreen Beyond. Now it came as a bit of a shock that the software company behind everyone's favorite VR movie theater has developed a truly impressive new VR headset. It's currently the smallest and lightest in the industry. It features a truly impressive ultra-high resolution OLED display that's 2560 by 2560 per eye, runs at 90 Hz, and features a field of view equal to that of the Quest 2. And even more impressive is the extremely low weight of 127 grams, and the fact that this headset is custom fit to your face. That's right, they'll do a scan of your head and custom fit the foam insert to match, which sounds ideal for people like me who just don't want to share. Now joking aside, this headset is extremely impressive, but I look at this headset and think to myself, even though it's most likely better, it's still not a straight upgrade from my Valve Index. The field of view is smaller, the refresh rate is lower, I doubt the audio and microphones will be as good, and this headset starts at $1,000 without all the necessary equipment. Now don't get me wrong, I want one of these headsets, it looks absolutely amazing, and I'd most likely toss my Valve Index for this, but even if I did that, what PC VR games would I play to truly show off this hardware? To be ready to drop over $1,000, you're already most likely a VR enthusiast, and you've played just about everything it has to offer. So this brings us right back to needing better software and games. Now the Pimax 12K is trying to solve one issue, and that's zero concessions. You can have your super high resolution display, your increased FOV, your wireless PC VR, and even your standalone portability. It wants to be your zero concessions headset. With that said, as you can imagine, the price tag is insane at $2,400. And while it's great that hardware like this exists, it'll just never move the needle when it comes to user adoption. Pimax is also continuing their trend of trying to do too much. The Pico 4 headset has a ton of money backing it up, and their standalone storefront is struggling to keep up with the Quest 2. Now just imagine what the Pimax storefront will look like, and they're also trying to sell us on a 4-in-1 portal device that'll have handheld games, VR games, and even Microsoft Kinect-like functions. Honestly, it seems gimmicky, and it's definitely not what VR needs. So let's move into a company that's actually headed in the right direction, and that's Sony with the PlayStation VR 2. Now, I've discussed it many times before, but the necessity of a PlayStation 5 definitely limits the user adoption of this headset. A $950 cost of entry is a lot to ask from people. But this is the only company finally delivering what we're asking for and what we actually need, which is high quality new games. Now, we can't say for how long or how much Sony will actually invest into PlayStation VR 2, but they are definitely coming out swinging, and we are finally getting some new AAA VR games, which hasn't happened since Half-Life Alyx. I'm putting Resident Evil Village and Gran Turismo 7 into that category, and the verdict is still out for other titles like Horizon Call of the Mountain. Now, going forward, Sony could continue to drop high-end titles, or it might eventually get gimmicky, and everything's a small casual title like we see on the Quest 2 now. Now, I'll have to wait and see, but this might be the jumpstart that the VR industry needs right now. Porting these games to PSVR could be in everyone's best interest, and this could allow some developers to create higher-end titles, as they know they'll be able to release them on both PSVR and the PlayStation VR 2. Who knows, maybe a little bit further down the road, they'll even be able to get some of these games working on the Quest 3, which is our next topic. As much as some people hate to admit it, standalone hardware is the right direction for the VR industry. I just don't think it's being handled correctly by Meta, who has their heart set on the metaverse and cramming XR technology into every inch of your life. Now, in this case, the hardware isn't there yet, and neither is the software. The Meta Quest Pro is a prime example. This right here is some of the BS that a $1,500 Meta Quest Pro gets you. My tracking is extremely off, I can't get my Guardian to engage, and the headset is basically useless until I reset it. I'm also experiencing constant stutters, and if you ask me to describe this headset's place in productivity, I would say it's just a prototype, and when it comes to gaming, it's just a slight update from the Quest 2. Now, I understand that Meta's ultimate endeavors go way beyond gaming, but that is currently the bulk of consumer VR usage, so they really need to kick things up here. Now, an undeniable issue has been hardware limitations, which require developers to spend a lot of time and money on optimization. On top of this, VR development has additional challenges that you don't see on traditional games, and when you combine this all with a low player base, it's an extreme risk to develop anything high-end for VR. Now, in the past, Meta has shown with Oculus Studios they're willing to develop higher-end games, so let's hope with the combination of updated hardware, Meta gobbling up 9 studios, and VR developers now having years of experience, higher-end titles could become much more common. Now, Meta also needs to hunker down and improve their OS. There's a day-to-day physical burden of entry when it comes to VR titles, and many people just refuse to pick up the headset because they don't want to break a sweat. Now, that's just an aspect of VR, and less interactive games is not the right direction, but if you introduce an extra hurdle, like a slow, stuttering, buggy operating system that requires you to frequently reboot, well, then you're just asking your player base to give up on this hardware. So that's the current state of the VR industry, and why we don't need more hardware, but rather better software and games. But I wouldn't feel right making this video if I didn't at least spend a minute discussing how significant the VR hardware improvements have been over the past few years. 2016 VR tech was a hard pill to swallow. It was clunky, uncomfortable, low resolution, expensive, and had severe limitations. The move from the original PC tethered headsets to what Meta gave us with a standalone device at only $300 in the Quest 2 is an absolute extreme leap forward. Now, people will always want more and more or better and better, but when it comes to the majority of the package, the Quest 2 is good enough. Its major limiting factor is its performance, and if the rumors are correct, the Quest 3 should help rectify that. Now, in terms of clarity, comfort, size, and weight, it's absolutely amazing how fast we've advanced VR hardware. We've been able to cut down roughly 60% of the weight, the vast majority of the bulk, while greatly increasing clarity and FOV. So if things like weight or comfort were hurdles for those interested in getting into VR, they were all definitely getting resolved, and at a much faster rate than the software issues, which definitely doesn't make any sense because software is currently the much bigger problem. And that right there is exactly why we don't need new hardware, we need better software and games.
And that was today's video, brought to you by my dad, Mateo311. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here,
Consider subscribing.
consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing.
Consider subscribing. We'll see you guys on next time.
We'll see you guys on next time.